So, thank you for all the team that organized the conference and for inviting me. I will speak in English because it will be better for the schedule aspect, even if I'm French speaker. Um, and so after the brain, I will switch to what Human Energy is creating, um, and we call them metaverse or virtual worlds or even online gaming. In connection with this morning, it's a kind of new exoplanet, but it's not far away, it's inside our computer. And so for this talk, I try to explore the tension between digital technology's role in fostering individualism and its potential to enable new form of collective life. And this question of how inside digital world, collective life, new kind of collective life, new kind of communities emerging is the main backbone of my research for 15 years now. And it's not a single research, but I work with my team. So thanks also for all my master and PhD students. And many books on that. So when I began to work on gamer and gaming and online gaming, that was the idea of art gamers. So that was the idea of art gamers. You see the computer is very old, but it doesn't change a lot because we have with the Wi-Fi this ID and this picture. And we called them 20 years ago, no life. That means they're no real life. I prefer the term digital hermits because for me there is less judgment in that term. But the idea was not very positive at that time, and especially because in Japan, there were at that time, so 15 years ago, around 300,000 hikikomori, that means people, young people especially, mainly men, but not only, that were retired from the society inside a room. You have to provide them food, and they were just connected to the real world with a computer. And so this case was the mediatic case that appeared. And so we have at that time this idea of an art gamer, no future, a bad future. And then the COVID time came, you remember, lockdown and the digital. And so a large part of the humanity discovered remote working. Researchers know what is remote working, but they discover remote entertainment. They discover remote conferences. Hopefully, it's a real one. And during that time and just after, art gamers appear to be the most resilient social category during the moment of the lockdown. And it's very important because you could see on my slide, today, nowadays, there is around 3.8 billion gamers across the world. Of course, they are not gaming every day, but imagine and we know that next year we will go to 4 billion. So half of humanity is gaming. So it's not just nothing. It's a huge number, and so it's a huge practices. And during that 15 years, and with that team, and in connection with many universities in Sweden, in California, in China, we try to answer many questions, and for me, mainly two questions. What kind of group can generate a social life only at distance? And which kind of belonging behind the remote and online practices? You have seen that initially the view on that kind of belonging was very, very bad, not so positive. But after the COVID and in my work, I was completely convinced before, it's more balanced. I come back to what is my main field work for 15 years, what we call video game universes. So I call them a kind of exoplanets but it's a digital and techno-planet. So there is two dimensions I have to deal with as anthropologists, with the constraint of the machine, so what we call affordance, how the machine suggests its use, how does the software constrain its use, but also the human dimension. And as anthropologists, I'm more focused on that. So the social world, and all behind this social world, the self-aspiration, creativity of the human, how user create a social world inside that technological or digital world. So I spent 10 years of field work, like all the other anthropologists, and before that I was a classical one in a subarctic field work, but for 10 years I spent time and time to observe players inside their worlds. The main worlds I observe, you know, maybe probably the name is World of Warcraft, so it's an online role-playing game. A massive game between during the time of my observation. There were around 8 to 12 million players. Half of them were daily players, imagine. And I spent personally 7,000 hours of observation. And I was not a player, so imagine it was exactly like an anthropologist in an otherness world. So I create my avatar and many other because I observe many other worlds. I immerse inside the world, and the most important for me is I enter into interaction with all that people, male, female, sometimes I don't know, and discuss with them and observe their practices. And the idea was to try to approach this new kind of human energy inside the digital with an observation inside the world, that was the map, but also an observation in reality or in offline world. So I joined my players in all that point. It was a French-speaking server. That means during that time, I joined them in their place, so in Quebec, in France, in Belgium, in Switzerland, even in Mauritius, in the Philippines and many other countries. And I spent hours of observation. That was in the Philippines. I spent many time with what we call guild masters, so the people who are managing the community online. And with my student, we explore many, many other worlds. So it took times, but we arrive at the conclusion that, in fact, there is the emergence of new way of being together, but inside that kind of world. We call them, in picking a imic word, which is the guild. So the guild is, sometimes they use team, sometimes they use other words, but the word mainly used is the guild. And a guild is a virtual community between 10 to 1,000 of avatars. It's a persistent group, so it's not just a group of seconds or minutes, but it could spend, there is a duration of months, even years. And I focus myself on what we call deterritorialized group, so people who never met before. And they create something together, and sometimes for years, imagine that. So how they will organize themselves, how they will manage themselves, how they will create something to live together. And so here are two examples of this guild. The Fallen is a French and Belgian guild, a very, very hardcore guild. That are the main character of the guild. And the second one, which is my main guild, is the Immortal Dragon. And for me, it's more interesting because this guild is not a hardcore gamer guild. It's a social guild. People come together, firstly, to be together and to build something together. So there is no pressure to efficiency. They want mainly to be, to explore that world together. That was the idea. And so the social guild has purpose and governance. Two questions came to me. How can I have a social life despite my schedule? How to belong in a liquid society? And that was what the players are seeking inside that kind of community. Sometimes they say also how to stabilize everyday relationship. Do not cut yourself off from others, but connect in a different way. I remember I met a train driver, and when he came back around noon, nowhere and no one to discuss with. And so he connected, and at that time he was in relationship with the other. So here is the immortal dragon. Here is also the immortal dragon in my house. They came from Canada, they came from France, they came also from Africa, some of them. And so we met, we make focus group, we discuss a lot during a small week, and I invite them twice. And we arrived to this idea that the guild is like a remote substitute affinity family. Fully remote link, no one know the other before, but freedom of entry and departure, no classical socio-economical filter, kind of anonymous CV, priorities to guilt attachment and the image of the group as a totem of the self. So there is a kind of collectivity that's emerging from individualism. And it's a selected group. I couldn't choose my family completely. I could choose my guilt. The guilt with sharing my value. As anthropologists, I found three main characteristics that all the anthropologists found in indigenous group. There is alliance. I found some wedding. There is a management of the power, which is very different that offline group. And there is a guild economy, especially based on sharing everything. And so you could see here the marriage, and sometimes the online marriage is before the offline marriage. And look at here, the dressing is exactly the same offline and online. And so there is also many kinds of other ceremony, funerals, collective ritual that have been created together. On the point of governance, it's a community of value, and that's the main point. In an online community, you could quit by one click, ciao. But you choose your community based on the values you are looking for. And so the first idea is on the power dimension, on the governance dimensions, the main idea is values. Shared values, reputation, trust, responsibility are central in the choice of a community. And I refer to the work of Nick Yee from Stanford in the Proteus Paradox, who say, inside that community, the role of the guild or the game master is completely central, even if you have no power. If it's a dictator, everyone quits immediately. So he needs all the time to manage the community, to be careful to everyone. And so this crucial role is a role of accommodating all the time with charisma, with humor, having a vision, the totality of the individual. And so the authority is not an authority of power. The authority is an authority of charisma, of ability to animate the community. So that means wisdom, selflessness, working for the common goods are completely central in such a community. And I will finish with guild economy. In such a community, there is all the time many activities, and with these activities you could provide many goods, many things that you could keep for you, but you could also share them in the purpose to strengthen your community. And in the main guilds I observe and my researcher observed, we have seen that this idea of common goods, and so good shared together, is the main law of this strange economy. I arrive to my conclusion. The guild model as a sociological model is emerging a new way of being together. Remote group without physical presence and without geographical border. So the language at that time is the new border. In my case, it was the French. The method of recruitment seems to be inspired by the world of work, but collective rules for the distribution of individual property are all the time negotiated. Collective rituals are commonly built together. There is an agile distribution of the function among the members, and the power is ruling between all the members all the time. A key and charismatic character is the guild master, but it's not master, it's animator, it's facilitator, it's a person a guardian of the common good together. And I finish with this idea that, in fact, there is a true horizontalization of the power of the organization, because everyone could quit the society at every moment. Thank you so much.